never known it until by chance you show up at an event like this and you realize, oh, I grew up across the street, or I was in that same block, or those kinds of things. So we're thankful for everybody for being here. We got one more very special guest. He's another native son of the neighborhood, as is Christopher, as myself, Eliezer, who was here, and as a matter of fact, the sound guy, Victor Moxo, is also from Spanish Harlem. This gentleman has written 3 books. They're now published in both languages, and here to read from his book to talk about the experience and the inspiration of the neighborhood and its culture, its society, is Ernesto Quinoñez. So
thanks. I know the Cosmo lasted longer than the Eagles, but the Eagles was also cool. And the last movie of the Eagle was Superman, because I saw it. That's right. That was the last movie, right? Yeah. In the summer too. Right. That's right. And then the Cosmo went later, like a couple of years later. Okay. So this is called Taina, and it's I'm bringing magical realism to the barrio. So I'm crisscrossing Garcia Marquez with the New York Weekends. It's about a virgin in the projects. And when at 13, cpFLORES became pregnant, she said that maybe some angel had entered her project, had taken the elevator, punched her floor, stepped off, and left its body so it could drift under her bedroom door like mist. The elders at the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses questioned Taina's mother, Sister Flores, and she vowed that Taina had never been with a man, that she had taught her daughter, si el macho puede. Sister Flores has said that she kept so close an eye on her daughter that she was sure that Taina didn't even masturbate. Her reply had made the elders uncomfortable. They squirmed in the chairs, and though a sin, they knew that couldn't have made Taina pregnant. The elders inquired about Taina's cycles. Were they early? Were they late? Did they vary? What types of pads did she use? The adhesive kinds or the inserted type that are shaped like a man's organ? By this time, all the air had gone flat in Taina's life, and it was her mother who was answering all the questions. The trial went on for weeks, and every Sunday after a service, the 2 women were called by the elders into this cold room. And though embarrassed that the entire congregation was laughing behind her back, Sister Flores stood by her daughter's story. The elders proposed to take Taina to Metropolitan Hospital to confirm that she was no longer a virgin, but Taina and Sister Flores refused. Time and time again, they refused. Dios sabe, Sister Flores vowed, that I have told the truth. This left the elders with no choice but to kick both women out of the truth. Afterwards, the 2 women became an odd sight in Spanish Harlem because they never spoke much to each other or to anyone. In the street, they walked hand in hand, mother clutching daughter, and made only necessary visits to the supermarket and the checo mates for welfare benefits. There were places that the 2 had never been to, like a movie theater, a beauty salon, or a bakery. The women were living in a universe of 2, and it seemed that not even crowds could ever disturb them, not catcalls from the corner boys directed at Taina, mira, yo soy tuyo. Not gossip from laundromat women whose bites were directed at Doña Flores, mira, la verga, que una sociedad mejor que esa. At school, Taina sat alone and got lost among a sea of teenagers. She never cared for clothes, makeup, popularity, or anything. Like her mother, she would smile when smiled at, but not talk back, as if her smile were telling you she was not your enemy, but did not care for your friendship. The boys liked her, they all fell in love with her. But soon they lose interest when she stared at walls or anything in front of her, as if the person talking didn't exist. The boys called her conceited, but I wondered if she knew that she was beautiful. It is not easy to know if you are beautiful, and I wonder what else Taina did not know. Did she know that her voice was a gift? I had heard that Taina sang, and she sang beautifully, that she had made the school chorus, and that when she took her solo, everyone felt shivers. That in her voice was the origin of music. It starts like the cry of a newborn, but then the wailing turns and changes, and it seeps inside your skin and drowns all your pain. In her voice, Miss Cahill, the science teacher, has said that everyone saw whom they loved and who loved them back, that they could feel their loved ones, smell their scents, that Taina's voice had woven itself into the fabric of their clothes, and that for weeks, no matter how much soap or how many times they washed their clothes, echoes would remain of Taina's voice. That her voice was also fixed into every strand of their hair, too. Like cigarette smoke, they smelled Taina's voice for days. I heard that a black girl had wept when Taina cried that day, that she said, "You gave it all to the fire, honey. It was like church." That's what I heard, and that's what I wanted. I wanted that sound, that voice, so I could hear love. A sound that people wait their whole lives for. I wanted to see who loved me, but all was lost. And if I remember well, Taina had been one of my classes. It was biology, and she never sang. She only said one word, pigeon. The word sounded hard, as if her tongue had never known sweets, and her accent was pregnant with Spanish, as if Taina had just arrived to the United States. Let's leave it there. Thank you.
Question, Ernesto. Your title, Taina, is gendered for the native people of Puerto Rico. Is that your thinking for the title of the book, or how did you pick that name for your book?
Well, Taina just means Indian girl in Arawak, I think. So it's very who we are.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to also make a connection to El Barrio with us and with the island, because there's a big gap between especially in literary circles. They don't know what we're doing here, and we don't know what they're doing there. So I tried making. So the main character is called Taina. Very
Now,
common.
in regards to the character types that you have in your book and their personal stories, like as is Taina, is that something that comes from your own personal background, or something that you saw was happening in the neighborhood, and you used that to base your characters on, their personalities and behavior?
Yeah, simple. But I was raised Jehovah's Witness, right? My wife is Jehovah to this day. So she always bugs me. Tiene que regresar a la verdad. Eso es el fin está cerca. Esos son signos. Anyway. So I always get that from my mom. So in the novel, Taina is pregnant, but she swears that no one touched her, just like Mary. But the elders, the Jehovah's Witness congregation, don't believe her, so they kick her out. And the only one who believes her is the narrator, the boy, who believes that she's special, that is a virgin, because when she sings, things happen. People see the dead loved ones. They see who loves them, and they see the dead rise, dead people that they once loved. And that's the magical realism, and it happens in the projects.
Yeah.
Over the bottom.
Now, were you raised in the projects, or were you raised in the tenements?
I was raised in the tenements till we got burnt out. I saw someone, I think it was you, right, who read that poem about we live in tenements, but we care about the projects. The thing about the projects was that they had more crime because they had more people, and they were also dirty, but they were fireproof, man. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to worry about the fires, So that's when we got Schaumburg, which are subsidized, so we were very happy after we got burnt out twice.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Gracias.
I'm so happy I made it. I was so scared I was gonna miss out on this beautiful event. I love books, so I will come to anything literary. As a little girl, I spent a lot of time at the Hamilton Fish Library reading a whole bunch of stuff that my mother would have killed me if she knew I was reading. But I was reading, because reading is fundamental, so no importa lo que uno esté leyendo, después que esté leyendo. But, quite honestly, thank you, and thank you, Feliz, for helping to put this together. I have a huge appreciation for books, and I was sharing that My mom passed away earlier this year, and I have been collecting all of these books because I always intend to read them, but I never have time. And so when she was passing away, we were going through that process. You know, as you can understand, right, many of you who have lost folks, the grieving process is very different and difficult for everybody. And I found that reading really helped to calm my soul, and it got me through a really difficult time. And so I thank all of you who have the gift and the talent of putting these words together in such a beautiful way, and really gifting that to us who don't have the same talent but really have a huge appreciation for all that you do. So gracias por tenerme, and I hope that it's a successful day. Gracias.
Okay. She has published poetry. She hasn't published a novel, but let's give her a warm round of applause to Maria Aponte.
Hello. So actually, Felix, I was at, and I was reminiscing with Ernesto. We were at the first Fiesta del Libro with Chris and Camaradas 10 years ago. Yeah.
A while back, like I said, I had hair on my head and it was
I actually, I'm a self-published author. I say that proudly. I came up in the New Eurekan Poets Cafe in the 70s with Sandra Maria Esteves and Americo Casiano and Luis Reyes Rivera. And in that time, a lot of Puerto Rican women were not really getting a voice to express themselves. And I actually started in theater and then I moved into poetry. So I lived that life of going on auditions and being told that I didn't look Spanish enough and my hair wasn't straight and my nose was too wide, and oh, you can't interview for that role because you don't have a Puerto Rican accent, you sound too educated. As the years went by, I found more comfort in writing my own work than going on auditions. And the reason why I actually did my 2 books is because whenever I dealt with outside sources in literature, they didn't want to accept my language. They didn't want to accept the way I spoke, how we speak. And so I decided that I was going to take all my stuff that I've been writing for 30, 40 years and put them in these 2 chapbooks. I treated this professionally. I had 2 good editors. They both live in New Mexico. I paid them to work on my manuscripts. My covers were designed by an award-winning artist, Mia Roman. The first book, this is actually a depiction of my building that I grew up in when I was a kid. I grew up on 117th Street and 2nd Avenue in a walk-up tenement building with the bathtub in the kitchen. I was a little girl when the race riots happened in Harlem, and my mother and I watched fire trucks coming down 2nd Avenue being set on fire. The Young Lords had their office over by 3rd Avenue and 117th Street over a bridal shop. Talk about juxtaposition. My second cover is my biography in prose. It's called The Gift of Loss, and these are actual real photos of my family. So whenever I sell this book, I'm giving you a piece of my heart. And I speak Spanglish. The 2 of them are in English and Spanglish. But for today, because it's been about a barrio, and I rarely read this piece, but I want to read something else, that a couple of new pieces that I've written. But just for today, because the Cosmo came up, I'm not reading from this one, I'm reading from Transitions, and this is called Para Mami. 16 is forever. When I was 16, girls were popping bazooka bubblegum. They wore marshmallow shoes with glitter on the side, pro kids with stripes on the side, and mood rings from Woolworths. 3rd Avenue was La Tercera. Carvel's on 106 sold the best strawberry milkshakes next to the pizza shop, best slice for 50 cents. Next to the pizza shop, next to the best slice is 50 cents. We bought military fatigue pants at the Army and Navy store, the one with the high waist and front buttons, and cool clothes from Marcos next to Crest. Baby t-shirts, tie-dye with rainbows, cause shopping on La Tercera and El Barrio is what you did on a Saturday afternoon when I was 16. We wanted to live in the projects cause they had elevators, and besides, tenements weren't cool. The Cosmo movie house where we watched Bruce Lee kick ass, imitating him, feeling the tiny tomboy spirit in me. Uh-oh, roundhouse. We ate alcapurrias and drank Mavi, our version of popcorn and soda. Then we throw in Raisinets for good measure when I was 16. The hangout was Jefferson Park, even if the handball courts had holes, in Benjamin Franklin High School, and the light fills on 116 and 1st Avenue. And Italian bakeries, Spanish bakeries, bodegas, both the regular ones and the ones that sold numbers. We danced to the Stylistics, Delphonics, Sky, Tavares, War, Chicago, Motown, always WBLS. I remember the mix, the sights, the sounds. I remember all this, you see, because my 16 always leads me back to you, your oxygen tank, the wistful look of yours, longing for your own 16 or my 16. So here it is, Mommy.
book. Okay. This is my first published book. It's a collection of short stories. It was published back in 2019, and it talks to each story speaks to a facet of Puerto Rican experience, you know, of everyday real people, and how they live, they love, they win, they lose, they cry, they love, they laugh. And so I like to read an excerpt from one of the stories, and the story is called Isabel. Okay, Isabel was a bit wary of the tunnels on Park Avenue. She had to transverse tunnels to get to school on time. The New Haven line ran on elevated tracks like a monstrous spine through the length of Harlem, carrying suburbanites from the comfort of their communities in Westchester and Connecticut to the comfort of their offices in Manhattan. The suburbanites were oblivious to the people who resided in the tenements and housing projects along the route, and the Harlem dwellers were oblivious to the suburbanites, aware only of the roar of the rails and the ugliness of the stone structures that supported the commuter trains. In the mornings, Isabel had two routes, one to get to school in the morning and another to get back home. In the mornings, she took a shortcut. She never wanted to be tardy because all the doors closed after the late bell, except for the door that led to the principal's office. She had practically measured the distance and time it took her to get to the side door entrance assigned to the classroom. It was on 109th Street. She lived on 112th Street, between Lexington and Park. Every school day, she would exit her building, walk a few yards to the left, cut across the schoolyard of the Catholic school to 111th Street, and walk briskly on her side of Park Avenue until she got to 109th Street. Then she crossed to the south side and faced the dark cavern of the tunnel. The blackened stones of the walls were slimy, and the acrid smell of urine assaulted her nostrils. She held her breath as she stepped over the trash and the occasional dead rat. Not very pleasant, but she always got to school early. Isabel rarely encountered anyone on the first route, but in the afternoons, the streets she chose to walk on were lively with people. Her fifth grade class dismissed on 108th Street, on the Madison Avenue side. Bunches of kids walked north on Madison and dispersed around 110th Street. Isabel would make a right turn by the shoe store, peer into the store's window, and fantasize about owning pretty shoes. Then she walked to the restaurant where her father worked. He lived in a furnished room across the street from the restaurant, and Isabel stepped in to see him every day. She missed him and did not understand why he had moved to that dumb room. After giving him a kiss goodbye, she would turn left on the west side of Park Avenue and walk north. Colorful kiosks filled with garments lined the sides of the buildings, just a few blocks south of La Marqueta. One of the kiosks hung a pink ballet tutu from a dingy awning. Each afternoon, she headed to that kiosk thinking only one thing: the tutu, the delicate tulle skirt, and silver sparkles. If the tutu was still there, it meant no one had bought it yet. And her fantasy of owning it, dancing in it, and twirling in it lived in her heart for at least 1 more day. Thank you.
I should have warned our writers that I'd love to have them share a little bit of their writing process or their identity. Would you like to come back up here, CB? CB, would you like to come up? CB?
I don't think she's hearing you.
CB, would you like to come up for a minute? Oh, sorry. Okay. But I just wanted to ask, one of the things we'd like to, poetry is such a beautiful form of genre, just because the attention they put onto each word, the weight that they put on each word is just a marvel. And I always respect, even though I'm more of a journalist, a business writer is what pays the bills, and also I'll do some fiction writing. I always try to incorporate those poetic devices into my work. So thank you so much for sharing that. I definitely could imagine, I think we've always had an image of something like a tutu that we kind of been eyeing in that store, that we kind of always hope that one of these days we'll be able to own. So, and I also just wanted to say that one of our children's writers, which was our original person on the beginning of our schedule today, was Anthony Tucker. He had to step out because our schedule was a little bit adjusted. But we do have some of his books on sale, and I'll be going through them and perhaps reading from them later on. So Anthony Tucker, don't forget that name, he's a wonderful children's author. But the next thing we're going to be doing this afternoon is talking about books in bondage. Is that so many books are being pulled off shelves. Oh, sorry. I had this elegantly prepared. Pulled off shelves. And really, one of the best organizations that are tracking this is PEN American Life, the PEN American Center. And they put out a report earlier this year talking about how within a 12-month period, 2,500 books were banned. And basically, I'll take care of that later. 25 books, and then basically that was impacting about 1,500 writers, different writers, just in the US. Now, as Christina said, we're all very educated people. We've all been hearing about these trends. So I'm not going to stand here for the next 20 minutes or so giving you these statistics, because you can read them anywhere. What I want to go through today is kind of understanding how this is starting to happen in our communities and how we can push back a little bit. So I'm going to give you a little story. I remember very vividly the first book over 200 pages that I read. I was so proud of doing that. I was basically in 7th grade. And the only reason why I remember it very vividly is I soon got into detention once my teacher discovered what book I was reading. Now, in 7th grade, I knew 2 things. One was that I wanted to be a writer. I always knew that. One, I loved horses. Loved them. So there was one summer afternoon where the library book sale, they had all the books for 50 cents, 25 cents, and they had one book, thick book, that had a horse on it. It's like, I'm reading that, that's mine. So I put down my quarter and I bought my first Dick Francis book. Does anyone know Dick Francis? Sort of like he was back in that time. I'm not going to date myself. You're going to have to look to figure that one out. It's basically, he was a very well-known crime novelist, mystery writer. And basically what his background was that he was a steeplechase writer from London. So he talked a lot about the track and everything. And so it was very much an adult crime novel. But I was challenged by it because, number one, I had my favorite subject. He was a great storyteller. And anybody this high knows a great story. And also it kind of challenged me. So I had to have the dictionary next to me while I was reading those books. So it challenged me that way.